We're just gonna hello, hello. I'm gonna wait a minute. I'm gonna do the typical thing that you do when you go live is wait a minute till some people start showing up. Hi, I'm Gary Ware. This is my buddy Jeff Harry.
Jeff Harry.
Jeff Harry.
Pleasure.
Jeff Harry's
Pleasure
right
meeting.
there.
Let's get Gary.
Yeah. It is. What's up, folks on LinkedIn? If you can see this, hit that heart button. Give us a little of that clap or the thumbs up or the. I see our buddy Kathy is on. What's up, Kathy? Hi, Kathy. No audio. Kathy, you might want to hit the little unmute button. Kathy, we're going to get started here in just a second. Can you hear us? If you can hear us, just let us know if you can hear us. That would just be awkward if you can't hear us and we're just mouthing like this. Thank you, Brian, for giving us the thumbs up. All right, cool. So we got a quorum. Jeff, thank you for joining me here on LinkedIn Live. How are you doing today?
I'm excited to talk about, well, I don't know if I'm excited, but I'm excited to tackle the idea of toxic cultures at work. And how do we address that?
Exactly.
How do we eradicate
that? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, there was a study and there was some reports put out by SHRM just recently, and the link should be in the description down there, and I'll put it in the comments as well. But basically, it's saying that toxic workplace cultures are costing employers billions of dollars annually. I'm just going to just quickly paraphrase what it said here, is that employee turnover triggered by poor workplace culture drained nearly $250 billion from businesses over the last 5 years as workers fled managers who they believe created this environment. And so this was a study that SHRM, or Society for Human Resource Management, put out a few weeks ago. And this is something that has been top of mind for Jeff and myself, because we've been fine-tuning our signature workshop, how to deal with a-holes at work using play. And Jeff, just hearing that, what do you think about that? Just hearing, are you surprised, not surprised? What are your thoughts?
Am I surprised? No. It's kind of sad. I mean, because this has been probably the case for, decades, if not longer. But I think now it's becoming more of relevant because of the political climate that we're currently in. And the thing that was really fascinating to me was one of the studies was they were saying how 76% of employees agree that their manager sets the workplace culture. Yet 40% of employees surveyed say their bosses fail to frequently engage them in honest work conversations. 36% believe their supervisors don't know how to lead a team. I hear that a lot. The data just backs up what we've heard, from our friends and colleagues all the time. Is just this idea that you can't be your full self. You can't be honest about the issues that you're actually having. And because of that, that is literally affecting you physically as well as mentally, and you don't feel like going to work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the people who are just intelligent and had enough, I wouldn't say just the intelligent people, but the people that had enough are just saying, you know what, I can find work elsewhere. I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And they do. And that is left with these companies with people that are the toxic ones and the people who, aren't, that don't care. And so as a result, you're not getting innovation. And you're barely keeping the lights on.
Yeah. And it reminds me, I remember this was a while ago, but I saw this study where they were talking about top executives, not the CEOs, but like the VPs and the directors, and they asked them, how many of you are honest with your supervisor, like, you know, the top person at your organization? And they were surveying, you know, hundreds of Fortune 500 companies, and they basically said 75% of them do not share their best ideas with their supervisors or with their CEO or their, you know, their high colleagues or whatever it is. And that means most of the products that we're using right now are the average crappy ideas. You know, like
Exactly.
there's a phone right now that could have a battery life that is 4 weeks, and we don't have that because people don't want to listen, or people don't feel comfortable enough to share their best ideas. They'd rather just hoard them, or just like they just don't trust the organization. And you don't want to be in that situation, especially if you're devoting, if you think about it, 50 hours a week, 2,500 hours a year, and you hate that place, or even worse, you feel indifferent about it. That's almost worse than hating, because hating, you're just like, I'm out of here. But when you're indifferent, you're just like, I guess I'll just tolerate this until like you die. Like, ugh,
Yep.
sounds horrible.
Yeah. And so, Jeff, you bring up a really good point. When I was at the ATD, Association of Talent and Development Conference, when it was here in San Diego, I believe it was not this year, but the year before, I was in a session and they were talking about your reserve energy. So you have your basic energy that allows you to do your day to day. And then you have this extra reserve of energy that you could deploy in multiple ways. You could use it to go above and beyond, give those amazing ideas, really just help build this company up. Or you can do it, you can use that reserve energy to be, to undermine people and be that, type of person that is just like, forget you, the toxic, the a-hole type. Or, and this is the thing that is overlooked, you can use that reserve energy to just like go under the radar. And that is where the bulk of that energy was being placed. There are so many people that are like, you know what? I just want to get by day to day. Like, I just don't want to be seen for whatever reason, and it's okay. It is what it is, but it shouldn't be that way. And
Yeah.
you're right. As a result,
Yeah.
we have average products. Companies are not really living up to their full potential. And as a result, people aren't living up to their full potential.
Yeah.
They just think, well, it's always been that way.
Yeah. Oh, and what is it? I just posted this. Tradition is lessons or that of people that have died. It was something to
Yes.
that effect, where it's just like traditions they're just there because they were there before. No one is questioning it. And that whole that term of it is what it is. Most people think it is what it is comes off as negative. But what it could be is like, it is what it is, and we recognize there's an issue, and we've accepted that this is the issue happening in our organization. So how do we want to deal with it? But most people are like, it is what it is, so it's never going to change, so I'm out, or I'm just going to not mention anything and just stay under the radar.
Yeah, agreed. And so you bring up a good point. Tradition, it is what it is. Thinking about these toxic work environments, it's not like just in 2019, all of a sudden, every company became toxic. This has been going on for decades and decades. It's just now, we're getting to the point where it's starting to come to the surface. People are starting to realize, like, you know what, I don't have to take it. Because speaking of that tradition, it used to be traditionally you just find a job, whether you like it or not. You just grind it out for 20 years. You retire and then be like, peace out. I'm done.
Yeah. You get a watch, maybe.
Right? But you get a pension. You get all these things. Pensions? What was this pension? Where's a company that you're guaranteed to get a pension? You're guaranteed to last for 20 years. That's not going to happen. Also, people are like for the first time, this is like really coming out where people are having physical ailments because of their environments.
Dude. Or they have been having them. It's almost like shell shock back in the 20s and 30s, where that was PTSD, but they didn't have that, term yet. It's the same thing now, as they've had it for a really long time. I think it's just like so stark. Something recently in the news recently. Do you remember the Amazon worker? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, yeah.
The Amazon worker who made a mistake, put toothpaste in the wrong box, and within 2 minutes, his supervisor was like, telling him what, came down and checked in on him, and then the next day he dies, and no one checks in on him for 14 minutes, and then they tell the workers to go back to work that same day. And like, that's just one like extreme example, but it's this example of like, we're just here to churn out as much work from you, and like, people just don't want to tolerate that anymore, which they should never have, but now it's just like, this is BS.
It is. And so, to that point, it reminds me of I was at the SHRM NorCal symposium a few weeks back, and a very enlightened and just such dynamic speaker. Her name is Michelle Kim. If you're watching, hey Michelle, she's from this company called Awaken, and her company, that's what they do. They help companies have those tough conversations. And she said one of the top things that employees want from their employers, from their bosses, is for them to check in on them professionally and personally. And again, we don't do that for whatever reason. We're like, oh, no, that's off limits. But like you said at the beginning, Jeff, it's not like we can say, you know what, I'm here at work. Let me take my personal self, let me leave that in the closet or in the car, and let me put on my work self. And anything that was bothering me at work or at home, whatever is gone, I'm just working. And then when I get home, let me take all the work stuff off, set that aside. Like, we're blending, it's a blend. There is no work-life balance.
Right. And I don't know, if I'm trying to think of, because I don't want to just rant, is like, I want to, if I'm trying to think of solutions, if we're trying to address like, okay, my work environment is extremely toxic, right? And there's certain situations and cultures that have existed for a really long time, and I don't know what to do. So I just decide not to try anything. My challenge to people would be, let's just try to move the needle on something very basic. So that could be something as simple as, and I've talked to some friends about this, of like saying hello to colleagues that you haven't said hello before. That's something as small as that, or being in the meeting and starting off with something positive, or at least like trying to change the energy of that meeting, or simply asking the question at a meeting or anything, why do we do it that way? What do we still need to do it that way? Just because we've done it in the past, do we have to? I think a lot of times we're just so scared of getting rejected or trying something new. But even trying that would just make the day more exciting for you,
Agreed. Because then that reminds me, and this is a really fun game. So if you're watching live or in the replay, I invite you to play this game. It's super fun, and it's a simple game. What I challenge you to do is to look around your current environment and find something you haven't noticed before. Just by doing that will give you a little bit of dopamine and endorphins, and it just make you feel a little bit better. Granted, it's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
It's still going to be there, but my goal for you is to help you get through the day without like feeling like you need to beat yourself in. Because again, like we said before, just because it has always been that way doesn't mean that it has to continue to be that way. And it takes the people that are brave, that are willing, as Kathy says, thank you, Kathy, for chiming in, that are willing to have those tough conversations, that are willing to be courageous to start to make the shifts.
Yeah. And I would add to that game that whole idea of like, identifying one or two things that you actually really do enjoy about your work, and who are the potential allies or the people that you sort of lean on, because you could even meet with them and be like, I feel like our meetings are super boring and really long. Is there any way in which we can change it? Can us two just by ourselves be able to change it? And then finding somebody else and slowly changing the dynamic of the meeting. It could be something as simple as like, why do they need to be an hour? They're just an hour because of what? Microsoft Office way back when. So why don't we do this in 30 minutes? And we're going to, and we'll do it while we're like, I don't know, standing or something like that. But just changing one dynamic will actually make you believe, oh, I can actually change stuff at this freaking place. I don't have to just sit here and deal with this crap.
Agreed. And so I just want to take a moment for those of you watching in. What are your thoughts on this topic of, the fact that there are, toxic work environments and people are leaving, it's costing companies billions of dollars. And, some people just feel like they just have to just deal with it. Like, are we just in la la land because we're in California, thinking that it's possible, or what are your, we could just be just up in the clouds, are we onto something? What are your thoughts? And thank you to everyone who's chiming in. We got a few. Oh, look. Oh, what's up, Haas? Haas is on there. Hey, Brian. And Kathy chimed in. People are speaking up. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Kathy. People are speaking up. Anyone else? Anyone? Bueller. And if you are watching this later on the replay and we're not live, feel free. We're going to be checking the comments. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Oh, cool. All right. Forgive me if I butcher your name. Sheridan? Jeff, do you think I pronounced that right?
Maybe.
Miss Williams, she said people are very quickly normalize behaviors that they see around them. So a big part of the challenge is helping them see what needs to change. You're absolutely correct in that. And that's just how our brains are wired, is once you start seeing things a certain way, your biases starts to kick in. You think that's just how it is. And it's Jeff and I, we, in our workshops that we co-facilitate, we've done this exercise where we have people focus on one specific type of color and look around the room for that color, and then they're quizzed on it, and they like this, just answer. And then we, while their eyes are still closed, ask them to identify, without guessing, 100% certainty, things of a different color. They looked around the room, they should have seen it, but yet they cannot, for the life of them, point them out. And so it does take those heroes of the people to be gentle, not like to be a-holes about it, but to just be inquisitive and start asking those curious questions to get people to start thinking differently.
And I think sometimes you feel like, well, maybe I would love to change it, but it's my boss, right? Or it's my boss's boss. And I think one thing that could motivate a boss is actually, I mean, when I see this, and when I'm looking over this article and they talk about how $223 billion are being lost due to toxic workplaces. That's an increase in turnover. That is people doing half-assing their job, things like that. So it would be interesting to ask your boss, like, what would you be willing to do or change in order to reduce our turnover? And how much money are we currently losing right now due to turnover? How many people are leaving like every 6 months? I mean, you can run a real napkin math number and come up with it and be like, crap, what in the world are we doing? And if we simply do something as basic as like, well, I'm going to check in with our staff more, or I'm going to ask my staff, hey, what is something that I can do at my job to be better so that you can be better? simple questions like that could save you tons of money. And right now we're choosing not to do that because we don't want to have that hard conversation.
Yeah. You know, the things that get measured can be improved. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's a challenging thing to measure, I don't think companies are accurately measuring, you know, turnover and lost productivity, even though we know it's a challenge. And I know there's some companies out there that are the leaders in that. And if you're watching and you have some ways to really measure this, please let us know. And I'm pretty sure there has to be some HR companies out there that, you know, some technology companies that can help with that, and give actual advice. And it just reminds me again, the Heath brothers. I forgot. I think it was Made to Stick. It was one of their books where they were saying, so in these situations, you know, we look at all these companies and we, you know, that are failing in this area, and we're like, all right, what's the common denominator? How about we start looking at the companies that are crushing it and trying to understand what are they doing? Now, it's more than just the ping pong tables, because I don't want people to say, well, Google, you know, they're crushing it. They have ping pong tables. We need ping pong tables, because it's if you have that, but it doesn't align with your company values.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, this is an amazing book. I almost finished with it, and I'm more than halfway done, and I haven't put it down since. It's called Think, Do, Say. It's by Ron Tite. So if Ron, if you're watching, hello, I'll give you a shout out. He talks about that. He talks about, you know, essentially being congruent, you know, aligning what you think about and what you do, and align it with the words that you say to help you move forward. And I feel like the companies that are the ones that are the leaders, that have consistently the best places to work, they have that alignment in values, and their values to them are not just words on a wall or in a plaque. It's actually, we believe in X. And in that book, Think, Do, Say, Ron talks about REI time and time again, and the things that they do. Like, for example, you know, they believe that, you know, life happens outdoors and you should live, you know, you should step outside, and they, you know, taken a stand, and they close their doors on Black Friday, and they encourage people to step outside. And, you know, that, you know, it starts with the top, you know, leaders, you know, as it's referenced in this article, how leaders, managers, well, it's interesting because we have the leaders at the top of an organization, but it's the day-to-day people managers are the ones that are influencing other people, and, you know, their attitude, whether it's good, bad, or whatever, are the ones that are having, you know, having that issue. So if you are that type of person, and this goes to like a lot of feedback that we've gotten, a lot of times people who are a-holes don't realize that they're a-holes. So you might want to start to, you know, just think like, am I the problem? Are your employees leaving?
Yeah.
And important, are they not telling you why? They're like, oh, I just found another thing.
I just found another job.
Maybe you're the problem.
Well, I've been looking for 6 months, but no, I just found another job. I think what I find interesting is I know a lot of companies that measure productivity, especially in these like 1 to 2 week sprints or quarterly reviews. But a lot of people don't measure like, do you enjoy coming to work? You know, how was your week in comparison to the week before, of like the amount of pleasure and enjoyment you had at work? I don't think that's even a question that is ever asked, right? And I think of what is it? I think it's Daniel Coyle's The Culture Code. That was something that we utilize a lot at my organization. Is he was saying the 3 main pillars of highly successful teams is your ability to build safety first and foremost, like most important, followed by then we willing to share vulnerability, and then finally being like, okay, now that we've shared vulnerability, now we understand each other, now let's have an established shared purpose, right?
Yep.
But I think people stop at building psychological safety, because they get interrupted at meetings. They don't feel like anyone's listening to their ideas. They don't feel included when it comes to like major decisions. And if you're not willing to build that safety, then everything else kind of is moot, you know? So sometimes like you're like, well, I want to get to know my staff better, so I'm going to share something that's vulnerable, that, you know, about myself. And they're like, dude, I don't even know who you are. I mean, I don't trust you, because I don't feel comfortable enough to share stuff with you. And now you have the audacity to be like, well, I just shared something vulnerable, so now you should share something vulnerable. It's like, dude, don't force this. So I think that's what's missed, is like really asking in your organization, and also asking of your bosses, what are we doing to create a safe work environment, both physically and then psychologically? And is that happening in our day-to-day actions and not just in our words?
Yep, agreed. And if you are speaking of talking about like safety and how everyone can help everyone, here's a really fun game that you can play in a group, and it's called. It was originally called Bombs and Shields, and it came from Augusto Boels. He's from Argentina, I believe, and he founded the Theater of the Oppressed. And I've heard variations of this game called Problems and Solutions. And so when I play it, I usually call it Problems and Solutions. And you just get a group of people, and you tell them to pick two people. One person, don't let them know who those two people are. Just in your mind, pick two people. Person one is going to be the problem. Person two is going to be the solution. They're just doing a service. It doesn't mean anything. And when the facilitator says go, you need to position yourself so that your solution is halfway between you and your problem. So that way, like if you think of it like this is the solution, this is the person, this is the problem. So no matter where they go, you need to position yourself so that your solution's halfway between you and your problem. And you let it go for a bit, and you stop it, and you ask how many people are protected by their solutions? Probably not. Then you say, all right, let's flip it. Your solution's not your problem, problem's not your solution. And then you go again, and maybe another third round, you go and say, pick a new problem, new solution, and do it. And then when you're done, it's really cool with the debrief. So on your way back to the circle to talk about this, I usually have everyone say, you know what, go up to all the people who were your solutions and say, thank you for your service. That does something magical, because a lot of times people are like, oh, what? I was your solution. I was your solution. I was the solution. And then we talk about that. And then we say, how many people were surprised when someone came up to you and thanked you? And it's interesting how, again, our actions, sometimes we don't realize what an impact, and it could be a negative or a positive. And, we do things and we don't realize, like, wow, that impacted someone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. Two, I asked, well, what did you have to do to be successful in this game? And someone also said, I've heard this said multiple times, is, man, the moment I stopped focusing on my problem, started focusing on my solution, things got easier. All right, cool, great. And then, another thing people say in a game like this is that they don't realize that we all are interconnected, and one person shifting can shift other people. We said in the beginning of, maybe you can just be that brave person that just does something slightly different and see what sort of chain reaction. So that's just a fun game of really highlighting what we are talking about here, since we are the play guys and we like to experience everything through play. Anytime I see a challenge like this, I'd love to figure out, well, there's a game that can really accentuate that challenge and get people to experience it so that they can have their own reactions.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? If you're watching, love to get you to chime in. But Jeff, any sort of takeaways on that?
Yeah, I mean, what I really loved about that is specifically around energy. I saw this quote recently, that your energy comes into the room before you come into the room. And I think a lot of times, especially when we go to the workplace, is like we kind of leave a little bit of our human at the door. We bring our cordial self, which is like, hello, how was your day? Like those things. But the thing of something as simple as a thank you. One thing that I was running a workshop for some of my colleagues about um, energy management, and how like sometimes time management is BS if you don't address energy management. Like, what are you doing about your energy? Like you're being very productive, and all of a sudden you get a phone call and someone like rips you a new one. Well, then guess what? Now you can't focus. Like now you're like shook, right? So um, I'm I remember mentioning this thing that you could do at the beginning of the day that I've done sometimes, where if you start your day by thanking somebody, whether that's sending an email to a client that you work with, or sending an email to a colleague, or someone that, that someone did a favor for you, and you start your day that way, you're actually priming your brain to then see other positive things throughout the day. And so many of these studies have communicated this over and over again. Yet when we go to work, we either drive through traffic, or we're on the train thumbing through our phone, looking at news that's all negative, and then you go into the workplace, and then the first thing you hear, or you believe you hear, is something negative, like, or you open your email and just all the work you have to do. And if some way, somehow you could start your day by doing something positive for somebody else, just see how the day potentially shifts for you.
Boom. I love that. It's so simple. And yeah, there's just something about shaking things up a little bit. So thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing that. So we've been blabbing for about going on 30 minutes here. Want to throw a quick plug. So Jeff and I, we are part of, I believe it's the world's largest virtual HR summit. Would you agree?
Yeah.
That's and it is put on by Bamboo HR. We are going to be doing a scaled down version of our signature talk, how to deal with a-holes at work using play. So if you're looking to get some solutions to, this toxic problem, how to have uncomfortable conversations, how to, as Jeff mentioned, shift the energy in the room so that you can be more focused. You want to check that out. And there's some amazing other speakers. It's going to be on November 14th. Mm-hmm. And I put the link in the description so you can just get access to that. And yeah, any parting words, Jeff, before we sign?
Yeah, I think the key part that I would really want to emphasize regarding toxic work cultures is the fact that they can change. There's such a belief that it's been this way and it's never going to change. And the fact is whether or not you are there and you're stuck there and you have to be there, or you're about to bounce and you're like, I hate this place anyway. Still, I would recommend, just as an experiment, just as a play experiment, what can I slightly do to change or reduce the toxicity, at least in my, within my circle of influence, right? And then just see how much of an impact you possibly can have, because I think you'll be amazed that you can move needles much further than you actually really expect. And then that's super empowering for either the next organization you go into or the organization you're at, where you're like, I can change this. It's just going to take a while and I have to be patient, but I can change this.
Yep. You have power within your locus of control. Jeff, that is such a powerful statement. And quick story, this is related but unrelated. A friend of mine, he was in a relationship, romantic relationship, and he was like, you know what, I'm just, it's not working, yada, yada, I'm going to bounce. And I'm like, just talking to him, and I was curious on what was going on. And I said, well, and, just like what you mentioned, Jeff, I sort of challenged, I said, it seems like you have some things that aren't met and you could work on addressing them, but sometimes when people have that mindset, it's like, no, you don't get it, yada, yada, yada. They just think that how it's been is how it's always been. But I just said, imagine this, like, imagine you address them and, they don't get better. All right, it's fine. But you worked on it so that now in the next relationship, you are getting better at addressing these things, and maybe it won't happen, or it will happen. It won't happen, or you will be in and out quicker, whatever the case may be. But you are working on yourself and your own communication. And I would like to say this story ended a happy ending, but it didn't, unfortunately. This person ended up, bouncing and then going to another relationship. And interestingly enough, had a similar situation in the next relationship. And, it is what it is. And we sort of talk about this in our workshop of dealing with ourself, of our perceptions and our way of communicating, because a job is like a romantic relationship. You say, you know what, the next one's going to be better. Forget this one. It's always beat me down, only to find yourself in another toxic work environment. Not saying that it's going to happen, but who knows?
And that's true. That's a really good point, because if you don't address it at this job, it's going to follow you to the next job. So you might as well test it out. You might as well see if you can shift in some way.
Yeah.
Allow the shift to happen.
Yeah.
They say.
What do you got to lose? And just want to quote Kathy. She totally agrees. It's easy to get overwhelmed and give up. That does no good. We need to do something, anything, little steps. So thank you, Kathy, for that bit of feedback. And so that's it. That's what we have. Whether you are watching this live or in the replay, we appreciate you so much from taking 30 plus minutes out of your day to hear us blab on about toxic cultures and how it's costing employers billions of dollars. This is something that's very passionate to both of us because we spend a good majority of our lives at work, and it should be something very pleasurable. And so thank you to everyone who's commented, liked, shared, whatever the case may be. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. Please address the toxicity. We should be having fun at work.
Yes. Do one little thing, and let us know how it went. And if you know someone who can use this, please consider sharing it with them. And if they're that toxic person, you don't have to tell them that they're a toxic person. Maybe just like, hey, this is something that you might be interested in. So we're just leaving it at that. We'll see you guys later. Take care.